Welcome back to the Monday Morning Point Guard podcast. If you do enjoy the video, please give it a like and subscribe. I'll be doing this weekly. Also, if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please throw it in the comment section, or if there's something you agree or disagree with, you can also throw it down there. We'd love to discuss it with you. Huge congratulations to Steph Curry for breaking the all-time three-point record for a career. It was an awesome moment. The shot he hit was pretty classic of him. Quick trigger with a dude draped all over him. I guess at least Alec Burks will get in the history books there. Also really fitting for him to do it at Madison Square Garden, having Reggie Miller on the call and then Ray Allen in attendance. Just a little thing about the moment there. I'm glad they let it breathe, took a timeout or took some time out. I think the Warriors had just taken a foul just to let that moment breathe a little bit. He got a chance to kind of interact with Draymond and Steve Kerr and Reggie and Ray and then his parents as well. It was just a really cool moment to see. I looked back at the Ray Allen moment when he beat Reggie's record, and the game just kind of continued on. There ended up being a foul on the next possession, but he was just kind of hastily shaking Reggie Miller's hand. So I'm glad they kind of learned from that and gave this moment its justice. Because it's really special. And I think this is a record that we won't see broken for a very, very long time. So just, I kind of want to go through Steph Curry as a player, what makes him great, or what makes him as great as he is. And then also kind of where he ranks all time, at least among point guards for this episode. Yeah, obviously best shooter of all time. There's really no debate anymore. He's got the off the dribble shooting, best ever to do that. Catch and shoot, he's got that. You might still take Ray Allen catch and shoot, but I don't know. It's hard to argue against Curry at this point. And then just the insane range he's got on the jump shot, quick release, all of it. You pair this with the fact that he's one of the best ball handlers in NBA history. I don't even think, unfortunately for him, he kind of is with Kyrie in terms of when he's playing. So people kind of consider Kyrie a better ball handler. I happen to agree, but I think if he had played during any other time, he would be the best ball handler in the league. Changed the way basketball is played. Even when I was a kid growing up, didn't see teams taking a ton of threes. I mean, during the pandemic, I watched the 2000 finals with the Lakers and the Pacers. And it was just it was very archaic to watch. It was very weird. It wasn't that long ago. 20 years ago is a long time, but not a huge difference in time when you consider the way that basketball was played. And we were looking at scores, in the playoffs in the 70s. Now teams really have become open to the idea of using a three-pointer as a weapon. And nobody does it better than Curry. So it's just been really, particularly since he entered the league, there's just been a rapid change in how teams play and how they conduct their offense. He's nearly a career 50, 40, 90 guy, which is insane. I mean, right now he's at 47, 43, 91. He may not get it. I mean, to shoot 43% career on three-pointers, especially when he's taken the shots that he does, that the really difficult three-pointers, whether it be pulling up from the logo or just the guys just draped all over him. I mean, Indiana the other night was just bound and determined that he was not going to break the record against them. There were plays where they had three guys closing out on him. I mean, they were happy to give up layups just to avoid him shooting a three. He's an excellent passer. I think it's one of his most underrated parts of his game. He does get a little cute with the ball, especially on the passes every now and again. He has some really careless turnovers, but as far as the vision and, the accuracy with some of these passes, he had one in the Indiana game where he just kind of threw it over his head, had his back to the guy, and it just hit him right on the numbers, basically. His assists, as far as the numbers are, in with the ranks of the all-time, point guards we consider, the best in the history of the league, but he has the ball a lot less and he's used a lot differently than them. So I think that's fine in terms of his skill passing the ball, like just eye test wise, you can see that he's got it. Um, Also 5 rebounds a game for his career. Kind of really underrated rebounding. I mean, he's had a couple of triple doubles in his career, and I think defensively he's not as bad as people kind of think. He's a decent sized guard. I think he's kind of obviously the guy you would pick on if you were playing the game planning for the Warriors and playing against them. Just for the fact that, like, they have Draymond Green, and when they were in their heyday, Harrison Barnes was a really good defender. Klay Thompson's a really great defender, or was. We don't know what he'll be this year, but they just had some really great defensive players. Andre Iguodala, same thing. And when they go to that death lineup, you know, he's kind of the obvious guy that kind of sticks out. But I think he's and also there's the component where teams are going to want to make him work on that end just to try and wear him out for when he's on offense. All the running around he does, he's in incredible shape to, run off the screens at the pace that he does. But he kind of reminds me of Iverson, at least on the defensive end. Iverson on the ball and kind of in a traditional defensive setting, not as great, but he was really good at playing passing lanes and getting steals and taking good gambles. Curry's the same way. He's averaging nearly 2 steals a game for his career. I think he was at 1.7. The efficiency around the basket stuff, people think of him as like a really awesome shooter, but he's a really great finisher around the basket. Probably one of the best we've ever had at the point guard spot, but it's kind of overshadowed by his shooting. 9th all time in effective field goal percentage. That's crazy to me. I couldn't believe that when I saw it. He's the only non-center in the top 15 on that. I think Kyle Korver was 16, but still only non-center in the top 15 for effective field goal percentage for a career. Ahead of Shaq, who was at 10th, which is crazy. From 3 to 10 feet, Curry has the same field goal percentage roughly as Shaq. It's a little bit lower, but still insane. Between 0 and 3 feet, he's, at 65%. That's around the territory of David Robinson or Hakeem Olajuwon. So that's crazy. I mean, you talk about a guy at his stature finishing around the rim, around the same efficiency level as, some of the all-time centers in the league. It's nuts. As dangerous as he is with the ball, he's even more dangerous without it. And huge props to Steve Kerr for kind of figuring this out, or kind of building an offensive system around him. I've seen some people kind of criticize him, Steph Curry, for being a system player. No other team can run the system that the Warriors do. No other player can kind of have a system like this built around them other than Curry, at least so far to this date. As a defender, like I kind of talked about it a little bit in the Warriors video when I was, just talking about their season this year. As a defender, when he doesn't have the ball, you still have to be mindful of where he is. So like typically when you're guarding a guy like LeBron or James Harden, the entire defense is keyed on them only when they have the ball though. But with the way Curry runs around without the ball and is always a threat to score, because I mean, he catches the ball and it's a split second and the jump shot is up and it's good. So like even you have to kind of pay attention to the guy with the ball, your man, and where Curry's at. And particularly when he's running off of all those screens, it can get to be a little much. And you'll see the Warriors probably more than any other team, especially in the last decade. I mean, Draymond Green, even at his age now, he kind of lumbers around out there. It's able to take 3 dribbles and, go in for a wide open dunk every now and then, just because like the defense got so distracted with what Curry was doing off the ball that the lane was wide open and no one noticed. So I mean, in terms of like a weapon and Kerr weaponizing like Curry's skill set, like we've never really had a player like this in the league before, where like he's just such a huge threat basically from half court in, even without the basketball. Like it just makes everyone around him so much better. It's just crazy. Um, yeah, I mean, and I mentioned, LeBron and Harden, not as big of threats off the ball. Um, but the way the defense has to key in on them on the ball, you still have to do that with Curry. I mean, you'll see when he gets a high screen and roll, the roll man is just wide open because both guys have to go with him to ensure he doesn't get a three up. Um, Arguments from a lot of older players, he wouldn't be as good in the 90s or before that. I mean, even today in the post game, like Shaq and Charles were kind of dumping on this, saying that, oh, well, he takes way more threes than Ray Allen and Reggie did in their careers, per game. And that's true. But I think, the only reason they do is because he's so good. Like if he wasn't as good of a shooter, you wouldn't be taking 8 threes a game or whatever he takes. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe he wouldn't be as good in like a different era. I don't agree, just based off of his skill set. But if he played for a different coach, we could see a completely different thing. I kind of mentioned how Kerr realized how to weaponize Curry's shooting probably better than anyone else would have. If he had played in like the D'Antoni system, it still would have been stupid how good he is, but it would have looked a lot different. And he may not have been as good if he was having a more ball dominant role where he's always got the ball in his hands. I think he would still put up crazy numbers. I don't know if he played in the 90s and, I think worst case scenario, Mark Price would be kind of what he is. I mean, you're talking like a all NBA caliber point guard who's 40, 50, 90 guy. I mean, that's like your worst case scenario for him, but I don't think anybody would argue that Mark Price is nearly as good as him. So I don't know. With his shooting ability, I just don't see how, and ball handling and ability to create space, finish around the basket, I think he would find a way. I really do. I know teams would try to rough him up in like a past era, but I just don't see it. I mean, in the finals, in the 2016 finals, I believe they had Dellavedova try to like keep up with him. And you needed to look like you needed to put him in an iron lung, after every time out because he was just so gassed from chasing him around. I don't think the guys from a past era would have any better luck chasing him around than anybody does today, where it looks like they need an oxygen tank, during the timeouts. Kind of, I've kind of harped on the situation he found himself in, but, having Steve Kerr as the coach. Almost didn't happen a couple of times, ironically. Curry was almost traded draft night, or for CP3 or whenever maybe not draft night, but whenever CP3 was leaving the Hornets, they wanted to make a trade for him. The Warriors wanted to make a trade for Chris Paul and offered up Steph Curry, although Paul wouldn't sign the extension with them, so the deal fell through. Kerr tried to get him on draft night. That's what I was alluding to on draft night. It sounded like Amari Stoudemire was involved in the deal. But didn't end up happening. And then I think the funniest one of all, he was almost traded for Andrew Bogut. You remember Andrew Bogut, kind of an underrated center, never really kind of lived up to the number 1 overall pick hype, but he was still a solid center for many years, underrated passer. I liked him as a center, but they wanted to trade him instead of Ellis, I think, initially to get Bogut, but he didn't clear his medical with the Bucks, so they ended up trading Ellis instead of him. Gosh, imagine Curry and Giannis on the same team. How stupid would that be? Will this record ever be touched? Yes, at some point, I'm sure. I don't think anybody playing in the league today is going to touch this record. Trae Young is a guy I see thrown around a lot, but I don't know. Curry is on pace to hit this year over 300, but assuming he hits 300 and plays for 4 more seasons, which he could play for more, and only hits 200 a year in those seasons, which I expect him to hit a lot more, but we'll just say that we're going to be conservative here. He's still looking at around 4,000 career threes. Trae Young, most he's ever hit in a season is 205. Looking like he's going to be in the 200s. Curry has had a season with 400 threes. It would take something like 250 threes a year for a 16-year career for Trey to get to that 4,000 mark, or hovering around that 4,000 mark for threes. So, I mean, he would have to hit more threes for the rest of his career than he has in the past. I don't think it's going to happen for him. And I don't know who the other candidate would be that we have in the league today. So it's probably some kid in middle school, elementary school, not even born, that's going to end up breaking this record. I think it does fall at some point. It seems like it's going to be untouchable, though, at least for the meantime. So where does he rank all time? Where does he rank all time among point guards? Kind of the candidates here. I think he's ahead of Nash and Kidd and those type of players. I think that's obvious at this point. Nash, no finals. Kidd had the one finals with the Mavericks where he was kind of very much on the back half of his career, or back end of his career, one of his last years in the league. And so I think he's ahead of them. So that leaves kind of Isaiah Thomas. I think he's clearly at this point moved in front of him. I think he had done that previously, but I think it'd be hard to argue Isaiah Thomas at this point. I still think he's a shade under Magic, but I think as his career goes on, especially, they're looking like they're a title threat this year. If they do win another one, I think he's going to be very much in that conversation for greatest point guard of all time. I think longevity is going to be kind of Curry's best case. His game is not going to age. He doesn't rely on his athleticism that much. I mean, he still gets around people, gets to the basket, but it's finishing under the rim with touch. And, as far as the cardio, he can keep that up as he ages. And his shooting's not going anywhere. He's going to be, he could play until he's 50 and still be able to bury jump shots out there. Not saying he's going to play until he's 50, but he has a game that's not going to age. At this stage in their careers, let's see here. I had some notes here. At this point in Curry's career, so with the season that he's in, Magic at this number of years in the league, he's already retired. Isaiah Thomas is in his last season and he's averaging 15 points and 7 assists a game. So Isaiah had kind of a steep drop off in production towards the back half of his career. Curry's still going at an MVP pace. Magic's already retired at this point. Isaiah's on the verge of retirement. In terms of accolades, Magic 5-time champ, 3-time MVP, 4-time assist champ, 3-time finals MVP, 12-time all-star. This is the one that blew my mind. 10 times all-NBA. He was all-NBA and second team in his sophomore year, and then first team for the rest of his career outside of that weird 96 season where he came back after a couple of years out of the league and played a handful of games. So he's basically all-NBA second team his second year in the league, and then the rest of his career, he's all-NBA first team. That's insane. I think he's still got a case, especially with the 5-time champ, 3-time finals MVP. That's going to be tough to beat. Isaiah, I had mentioned Curry kind of moving in front of him probably a while ago, but I threw him in here just for sake of argument. 2-time champ, 1-time assist champ, 1-time finals MVP, 2 All-NBA second teams, 4 All-NBA first teams, and he was a 12-time All-Star. Now, Curry's accolades here: 3-time champ, 2-time scoring champ, 2-time MVP. He was the first unanimous MVP. He got a lot of flack for that back then. I think people thought he was undeserving of being the first unanimous MVP. That season, he should have been unanimous MVP. That's silly to argue against that. But I do understand the argument of maybe not being the first unanimous MVP. Shaq, his MVP year with the Lakers, he should have been unanimous. It's silly. And then there was one Heat year, I don't remember off the top of my head, but LeBron was 1 vote shy of unanimous MVP. Some knucklehead voted for Melo for MVP that year. One of those two, and I'm sure there are some cases that I haven't looked into thoroughly in the past, even before that, where guys should have been unanimous MVPs. I'm sure MJ should have at some point in his career too. So yeah, regardless, first unanimous MVP. 7-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA. Yeah, 4 first teams included in that. No finals MVP, which is kind of nonsense. That first finals he was in, the 16 finals, he wasn't quite himself. But he was still 26, 5-6 and 44% shooting, 39% threes. That's pretty solid. But I mean, he wasn't as dominant as we had seen him be during the regular season or even earlier in that playoffs. Iguodala gets that finals MVP, holding LeBron to 35, 19, and 9 in that finals. Now, in Iguodala's defense, he did hold LeBron to 40% field goals, 31% threes, but everybody was hurt on that Cavs team. So LeBron kind of had to do it all. I think he's still a shade under Magic, but I think it's not unreasonable to project or think that at the end of Curry's career, we would be talking about him as the greatest point guard of all time. I think it's very realistic.